Welcome to the Powerful One podcast with your host, Tommy Parker. This college dropout turned entrepreneur and high performance coach created Powerful One with the mission of sharing the stories of individuals who have divided from conformity and redefined success in their own terms. Join us as we dive into the incredible stories and journeys of becoming truly powerful.
Yo, welcome to the Powerful One podcast, everybody. How about that new intro, guys? It is a new year, so we got a new intro. You know, we are leveling up here at Powerful One podcast. And speaking of leveling up, our guest today, Justin Schenck, it is truly fitting that we're talking about leveling up because, man, this dude has came from the bottom. He has truly leveled up in all areas of life. And let me tell you a little bit more about our guest today, Justin Schenck. Justin Schenck is an entrepreneur, speaker, and host of a top-rated podcast, Growth Now Movement. He has been named a top 8 podcaster to follow by Inc. magazine, featured in Thrive Global, and chosen as an icon of influence in a new media space. Justin's podcast has grown to become a podcast that is currently getting played in over 100 countries every single week, and he has gone on to help countless people grow their brands and businesses through podcasting. He is also the host and creator of one of the go-to events for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers, Growth Now Movement Live. And in this episode, we talk about Justin's rough upbringing, growth, enjoying the journey and finding fulfillment, shifting your mindset to overcome limiting beliefs, taking action, the 4 pillars of life and how to balance all of them. He talks a lot about overcoming fear, not only fear of failure, but also fear of success. He talks about visualization, consistency, overcoming adversity, and finally, his number one piece of life advice for everybody. Such an amazing episode, guys. Get ready to be inspired. Get out your notepads. Be present for this episode. Here it is, episode 39 with Justin Schenck. All right, guys, we are here with Justin Schenck, Growth Movement Now podcast. Just a jack of all trades, man. You got a lot going on, but I'm honored that you're here on the podcast, man, and being part of this. You know, I recently got connected with Justin as just a friend, mentor, and I'm also doing some coaching stuff with him now. And he's been, you know, in the short time that I've known him, quite an inspiration, not only from a podcasting standpoint, but also just a coaching and mentoring and leadership standpoint. So, man, honored to have you here, brother. How are you?
Tommy, I'm great, man. I'm excited about this conversation. I love what you're all about, dude. Like, you know, when you meet somebody and their energy's just on point and you're like, all right, this dude's up to big things. I need to be in his space. I'm happy that we're doing some cool things together here in the next couple of months, and excited to hopefully say one or two things that make sense to your audience and it impacts them a little bit.
No, man, there's gonna be a lot, man. This is gonna be one of those ones, people. If you're listening right now, take notes, get out a journal. You're gonna listen to this one back and miss some stuff. So stay locked in if you're take notes and really digest this, because Justin's gonna have a lot of awesome stuff. But man, I appreciate that, dude. There is something to be said for that, man. I'm just big into just the energies that are in a room, man, like where people are vibrating. And I felt that immediately from you. And I'm real particular with how I transfer my energy. So, you know, hearing that from you means a lot, man. So, you know, one thing, man, I like to, you know, kind of start at the beginning, man, because there's so much stuff when you're a kid from programming that leads to basically the way you lead your life as an adult, to just so many pivotal things in your life, and your childhood and the way you grew up is just so interesting, especially when you just look at that. People just see a beginning point and an end point. Man, I'm fascinated in the shit in between, bro. So I want to get into that a little bit more, man. And we could kind of start back like your childhood, the way you grew up, and we'll kind of vibe from there, man. So the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. You talk about childhood. I mean, when I look at my first 12 years of life, it was super normal. Like, I was lucky. My parents were married, you know, middle income, things were good, didn't want, so to say. And around 12, things started to fall apart. My parents got a divorce. I broke both my hips. And it was kind of the tailspin for my parents. And that reflected in my life in different ways as I kind of gone through life. But the thing is this, like, if we look back at our lives, we really start to take control at 15, 16, 17 years old, as far as like, what type of path am I going to create for myself? We might not know what we want to be in life, but it's almost like, okay, I have some say in this whole entire thing. And so when I was 16, I was a junior in high school, and I found myself with a 1.7 GPA. And at that time, my mom was in the middle of a 20-year opioid addiction, and my dad was in jail. And when you look at that, it really kind of says I've got no shot, right? The world kind of looked at me statistically and said, you've got no shot. As a matter of fact, if your parent ends up in jail, there's a 50% chance you're going to end up in jail. If your parent's an addict, there's a 50% chance you're going to be an addict. Like if you do the math, I'm 100% screwed, right? And so when I look at that, I go, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be in life. I just knew I didn't want what my parents were choosing at the time. And when I was 19 years old, I got a job in direct sales. Didn't go to college, hence the 1.7 GPA. Got a job in direct sales, which introduced me to self-development. So my mentor at the time handed me a book called Who Moved My Cheese. And I read it. And that book is about understanding that things will always change around us. But what matters is how we react to that change. And it was that moment in my life that I realized, wow, I have complete control over what I want to be in life and what I want to do in life. And so fast forward, and we'll get into the nitty gritty as we go, like you said.
Yeah, of course.
But if I had to fast forward through 3 failed businesses, I then launched a podcast, which has then launched a platform for me to do live events, speak all over the country, run some masterminds, retreats, and all these other things. And it's been really a blessing, man. And I'm excited to go deep in the middle, right? So many people worry about the end result, like you said.
Yeah.
But the important part is that middle, right? That first, the realization in 19, but then you figure from 19 to 30, what the hell did you do? There's some things in there we can unpack and kind of go through that whole entire journey as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, you just hooked people listening, man. The first time I heard that, I was like, wow, dude. And I just wanted to know more. And I'm still at the early stages of knowing what that 19 to 30 and everything looks like. So it's cool, man. I mean, it is kind of crazy at 19 to kind of get that grasp and really get it. Cause I feel like you said, man, those years, let's call it like 15 to 19 is just so pivotal, man. I was having a conversation last night with the small group that I lead at church, and man, I remember being a freshman, you know, and I'm bad with age and with and grades, but man, I just remember being so lost, so confused, and really all of high school. And so you know, obviously right into college as well. But man, that's just such a make or break pivotal point. And it seems like for you, that 19 was really the catalyst. So tell me about that mentorship that you had early on, that obviously that book, and just the change in mindset and perspective of like, man, the odds are not only they're stacked against you, I mean, they are like weighing against you, and just how you overcame that and what that experience looked like.
Yeah, you know, I think people hear stories like mine and they want this aha moment, and they want the one thing I did, the one thing that changed, the one whatever, so they can go and try and create that spark in their life and create a change. But the reality is, like, it's small incremental wins every single day that led to what I do now. And so I focus really, really heavily on growing 1% every single day. And if you look at that, like, wow, like over time, that's 365% a year, et cetera, et cetera. So the growth game is going to be massively strong year over year if you can focus on that. But we want to make these massive leaps and do all these things, right? I mean, when I was 19, yeah, somebody handed me a book that introduced me to self-development. But you know, as well as anybody, self-development and constant motivation is a lifelong thing. Like I'm still reading books today. I'm still absorbing podcasts today. I'm still trying to learn something new every single day. So there's not this one aha moment, right? But there's this constant evolution and growth in who I was. So I did what I did in direct sales, and I was very successful, became a manager with the company, got to meet cool people like Hal Elrod when I worked there, and you know, form some sort of bond there, and do all these really cool things, right? But then you hit another point in life where there was another hurdle, and I was actually forced to then move to Reading, Pennsylvania, at the time, which is where I live now, to help my mom pay bills, because she obviously was having trouble keeping a job because of her addiction and all these things. So I moved here, and I ended up getting a job in the corporate world, and slowly worked my way up, and I did well in the corporate world. But something was missing, right? So there's that next evolution of like, okay, here's an acknowledgement in my life that I need more than what's going on. I was doing well financially. I was a manager with a medical sales company, and I was doing well, but there was something missing. And I realized it tied back to that 19-year-old self, who had this obsession with growth, creating my own life, impacting others. Actually, when I was 19, I had somebody who worked for me, and I say kid when I talk about the story, but the funny thing is he was probably older than me at the time because I was so young. But he came to me after a summer of working for this direct sales company, and he was not a very good sales rep. And he came to me at the end of the summer. He goes, you know, Justin, I probably would have made more money working at McDonald's, but because of what you taught me, my life's going to be so much better. And it was that moment when I realized what my purpose was. I just didn't know how to fulfill that. I
Wow.
also
Yeah.
knew at 19, 20, 21, as I was going through my own demons that I carried through, you know, from my childhood and all that stuff. I had to work through all that before I became the mentor to these people who needed me. But it was that acknowledgement of like, wow, that's the feeling that I want every single day. Like that is my driving force. That is everything that I want to do. And I got lost in the corporate world like most people. Now, I had multiple failed businesses because I thought entrepreneurship was the thing that I wanted. Like, right. Create the freedom, have people look at me as an entrepreneur and be like, wow, Justin really overcame the odds. He did all this cool stuff. That's what I was reaching for. And because I wanted the money and the cars and everything else that comes with it, because I wanted people to look at me and go, wow, look at that. Justin's done some great things. And what ended up happening was I was looking to start the podcast, and I was actually up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, recording the intro and planning out what are we going to do. And the original idea for the show, which, I mean, this is more than 5 years ago at this point, the original idea for the show was to interview entrepreneurs so I could learn how to be a better entrepreneur, so I could launch that next business and then finally get that recognition while Justin did it on his own, right? Because I have this weird stigma and tie to like success in the corporate world still being handed to me and not earned. In a weird way. And so I was like, okay, entrepreneurship, all these things. And I was planning this podcast. I was recording the intro, and I got that phone call nobody wants to get. It was my sister. She called me and said, the doctor says you need to come. And I drove 7.5 hours down to South Jersey. And my mom was intubated in a hospital bed. And that's when she lost her 20-year battle to opioids.
Wow.
And it was in that moment that it shifted my entire perspective about what life is all about. Number one, I realized it's not about what other people think of me. It's about how I can impact other people. It's about how I can make them feel. I also realized that it's not about the money and the cars and all that stuff. Again, it's about enjoying the process of life as it goes ups and downs. Because look, you can make all the money in the world, you're still going to have downs, right? Like I've known celebrities and people who are very successful who've committed suicide. So therefore, that's not the answer, right? And so when I realized that my mom, who passed away, struggled with this her whole entire life, I realized that that's what I'm here for. I'm here to teach people that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how bottom your rock bottom is, you have an opportunity to rise up and build something great in this world for yourself or others or both. And that's what the show became about. The show became about overcoming adversity. The show became about climbing out of your rock bottom moment. And more importantly, the show became about hope in those rock bottom moments. So people can realize that even when things are really tough, there's opportunity around every single corner. Every time we open our eyes in the morning, there's an opportunity to create something great. And so that rock bottom moment became my catalyst. And I realized that there's so many great people in this world that their rock bottom moment became their catalyst. And so really the growth journey for me over the last 5 years with the podcast and the teachings and stuff like that was, are you actually happy doing what you're doing? Or are you doing what you're doing because somebody else told you to do what you want to do? Right.
Man, it's so true. I mean, I think about that all the time. The whole idea of like, you know, a lot of the people I know are really living somebody else's reality, somebody else's life that they wanted for them. So, you know, the fact that like you, and it took this huge moment, this huge inflection point to be the catalyst for that growth and knowing you wanted more. Man, it's an incredible journey from, and it's so powerful to hear that that's the impact, man. Cause you're absolutely right. Like, nobody wants to hear just the guy who had this big break and this big break and this big break. There's no inspiration in a journey that's all sunshines and rainbows. You know, like we live for, like you said, man, those deep inflection points, those worst moments of our life at the time are what breeds those amazing successes. And I think that's what's so awesome, that you've been able to not only just shift your mindset completely from that, you know, that unfortunate, that deeply sad and impactful moment in your life to now where you are now and driving your whole life, man. And I think a lot of people listening can take value in that, man. It's such a hard thing to do, man. Look yourself in the mirror and be real and have the self-awareness to say to yourself, you know, who am I? And is this who I want to be? And is this where I want to be and where I want to go? And so seeing that shift for you, man, and the fact that it did come from such a low moment is so powerful, because it shows people that, man, like you said, hang on to that hope when moments are low, because you're going to have those ups and downs, man. And it's just crazy, obviously, you know, where that started to where you are now with the podcast and everything, man. What's something that always sticks with you in terms of just that same idea, man, when stuff gets really low, and what really has helped you? I mean, obviously I know the situation you just said, but what are some other ways, man, that you just keep the perspective and know that those hard times are going to breed those, you know, those really special times and moments?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really something that I learned from a friend of mine, Ed Milet, who he says this all the time, and he goes, "Life is happening for me, not to me." And it's about shifting out of those victim stances and victimizing yourself because of the things that are happening around you. And so, look, bad things are constantly happening, right? Like, look, nobody escaped COVID. It affected every single person on this planet, whether they got it, they knew somebody who got it, or it affected their business, or had to make them change their business. Across the board, everybody was affected by COVID. So, your success patterns doesn't dictate whether bad things happen to you or not, right? But you need to then go, okay, why is this happening for me? And it's that mindset shift, that if you can truly embrace that, not just say it, but truly embrace the idea that this is happening for me. What can I do to make something great from this opportunity? Versus, oh, woe is me. Oh, I'm going to wait it out. Oh, goodness, like screw the government and all these other things as far as how we're navigating this COVID thing, right? But the reality is, it starts with that, right? It starts with that mindset shift of understanding that life is happening for me. That's going to create action in your life, because instead of playing the victim, waking up later every day because there's nothing going on, drinking, eating poorly, doing all these things, it's about that shift of like, okay, this something great is happening right now. Let me take action, right? And then the second thing is always taking action. Now, there are moments in our life where our own limiting beliefs stop the action from happening. And here's what happens, right? Limiting beliefs come from what I believe three separate places. One is from our childhood, right? Things that our parents may have said, whether it meant to be hurting us or not. So things our parents said, things our peers said when we were kids that we held on to forever. That's one limiting belief. Number two limiting belief is our own self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. I'm not good at public speaking. Whatever the things in our head that we're saying negatively, right? And number three is society. So if I looked at the limiting belief society would have put on me, hey, your parent was an addict, your parent was in jail, that's where you belong, then that's probably where I would have ended up. So we have to be able to overcome those limiting beliefs. And I want to share how to do that. Because we all have them, right? Like I'm sure whoever's listening right now, or even you, Tommy, you're thinking, okay, I know exactly what my limiting beliefs are. We all have them. And I'm about to share with you a limiting belief that I have still.
Absolutely, man.
So
Please do.
no, for sure. So here's the thing. We have to get uncomfortable in our life to overcome those limiting beliefs, right? When we go, okay, I want to be a millionaire, right? Say that's what people are thinking right now. I want to become a millionaire, but I don't have the tools. I don't have the network. I don't have the skills or whatever. These are the limiting beliefs I have to help them get there. So how do we make sure that we get uncomfortable? Here's an idea. Invest in a coach that stretches you financially, but then gives you the tools to then create the $1 million business, to create the $1 million brand, to create the $1 million whatever, right? So we then get uncomfortable by spending money or financially stretching ourselves in order to go push forward, right? For instance, people say, I don't like public speaking. Here's one where I'm going to take money out of the equation. I don't like public speaking. Here's an idea. Get uncomfortable, get on a stage and go public speak. Whether it's to 5 people, 500 people, or 5,000 people, go do it. And as you go and do it and overcome those limiting beliefs, you're no longer going to say, I'm a bad public speaker. You're then going to say, I've gotten really good at public speaking, or I've become a public speaker. Like it changes and shifts that perspective. Now, here's an example, and I always like to use myself as an example, even when I'm going through them. So I've always had this limiting belief. I said I briefly scanned over when I was 12, I broke my hip. So when I was 12, I broke my hip. When I was 14, I broke my second hip. And what this did for me was I stopped playing sports, started playing video games, and I got pudgy. And I was a pudgy kid for a while. Then I got thin. Then I got pudgy. Then I got thin. Then I got pudgy. Then I got fat. Then I got thin again. Now, I've never been somebody who was super fit. And I realized just recently, I looked back and I went, I'm allowing my 12-year-old self to tell my 36-year-old self that I can't be physically fit.
Wow.
Think about how crazy that is when it's worded that way. I allow my 12-year-old self to tell my 36-year-old self that I can't do something. And so what I'm doing to get uncomfortable is today is day 14 of 75 hard, where I'm pushing my boundaries beyond anything that I ever thought I was going to be able to do. And here's the crazy part. It's been really easy. It's been an easy 14 days. So imagine getting uncomfortable and then realizing, wow, I've listened to this voice in my head for no reason. So that's the type of thing that we need to do to push past the boundaries that we set for ourselves.
Man, that's incredible, man. And I think about all the time, like, all the things that I wasn't good at and had these like, or had this, these limiting beliefs, whether you said like from those different three areas where then I realized, putting myself in positions to be a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable, and I got so much better, man. I used to not be able to order food at a restaurant, dude. I couldn't talk to you one-on-one and order food from you. But as you're saying it, I'm even having more of realizations of times where I've done that, man. But now I'm thinking about it, from somebody who's starting at level 1, man, or level 0, like, where do they begin with that uncomfortability? Because everybody, and how do they really like begin to break out of that comfort zone, man? Because people are living in these comfort bubbles, man. Being comfortable is comfortable, there's no uncertainty attached to comfort, you know what I mean? It's a very, again, it's called comfort. It's a very comforting feeling. There's no risk in it, man. So what is like a good way people can do that from a very beginner level, and to be able to kind of break out of that comfort that they're stuck in?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. When I think about some basic things, and look, everybody's different, so it's really hard to be like, hey, everybody can just go do this, because we're all afraid of something different. We all have our own limiting beliefs, and yes, there's certain times where there's extremes. But what about a small limiting belief? What about I'm not a good meditator, or I'm not a good writer, or I have bad handwriting, so therefore I don't take notes, or whatever? Well, then start taking action every single day. Like going back to that 1%. So I'm a bad meditator. Great. Try for 3 minutes today. Try for 5 minutes tomorrow. Try for 10 minutes the next day. Or, hey, you're a bad writer. Start just journaling. It doesn't matter how it comes out. It doesn't matter, whatever. Just start journaling. And so those small actions are going to make shifts in your life. Like, when we talk about limiting beliefs that we have in our life and how we can grow, we always think these massive things, right? People have limiting beliefs over really dumb stuff too. And like, I'm not trying to downplay what it is, but just something so small and so inadequate, but it stops them from doing bigger things. Like, I know people who go, I want to write a book, but I'm a bad writer, so they don't write a book. Well, your book could change the world. So why don't you start journaling today? And I think sometimes we just have to take those small steps today to create the bigger future, for everybody else.
Man, I love that. And it just goes to like the basic little stuff, man. Like, I'll take the meditating example. That was something I would say all the time, man. I would use that kind of block. I'd say, man, I can't meditate. But that's because I was trying to jump into meditation and do a 30-minute unguided meditation like a freaking monk, bro. And so, what I really had to do was get around, people who were like, man, take it in small little increments, build these small daily habits. So, I had to restart a couple times at meditating for 3 minutes, like you said. And so, man, that's fantastic advice. Just, take it a small thing at a time, whether it's you want to, start going on a run, man, just, put your shoes out and go on a walk first, or, put your shoes out and then the next day go on a walk and the next day go on a jog, man, and kind of build that small and incrementally, which I think is so important, man. Like you said, people expect to have that one little thing they can grab on that Justin did that took him to the level, but it's these little building blocks, man, stacking those bricks every day. And so, I think it's cool to hear that from a guy like you, man, that there was no just, one magic pill, so to speak, that got you there.
And it's true. Like, when you look at everything that we want in our life, it all comes down to action. And I realized that, like, so, it's funny. You're 23 years old, and I'm sorry if your listeners didn't know that. They know that now.
Yeah,
you're 23 years old, and if I look at the trajectory in which you're on, it's unbelievable. And when I looked back and I said, what took me from 19 to, I mean, I launched the podcast when I was 31. So what took me from 19 to 31? I might've been 30. What was I doing? Because I was always reading. I was always learning. I was always having mentors. I was always doing these things to push myself. But I didn't take action. I didn't take the things that I learned and put them into play into my life. I didn't take all those little steps and those little hints and those little teachings and then put them into action. Once I started doing that, everything changed, right? Like, everybody has the same opportunity to learn what I've learned. Like, nothing that I've learned from a mentor that I've paid thousands and thousands of dollars to can't be found on YouTube or whatever. Like, it's all out there, right? Like, I teach people podcasting, which is one of the things that I do. Everything I teach is somewhere out there. Like, heck, I think there's a free course out there right now that you can get that somebody stole from me. That is everything that I teach, and you can just go get it. But the thing is, I realized that I had to be held accountable for the things that I was learning. And so when I started to truly invest into coaching versus mentors, when I started to truly invest in people who held me accountable and I started to take action, that was the biggest shift for me. It was the understanding that I can learn all the things I want to learn. I can be motivated every day by watching YouTube videos that pump me up or listen to podcasts that get me excited about something. But what matters is taking the action. And that was the big shift for me more than anything. And I know that sounds so broad and generic, but it's the truth. Like, yes, I know systems and processes and these things that I've learned that I now teach other people. And I've done all these things. But it was just simple. Take action. Do one thing today that's gonna push you further for tomorrow or the year or 3 years, right? And one more thing I want to add, because it looks like you have a question, but one more thing I want to add. Look, we all have big, huge goals in our life, right? Like we want to make $1 million, or we want to make $10 billion, or we want to, like, for me, my huge goal is I want to fill an arena for Growth Now Movement Live, which is my live event that I do based off of my podcast. And that goal can be very scary. That goal can paralyze us because we become afraid of what could happen, right? There's this great fear of success in many people. And so what happens if I said to myself, hey, year one, I want to bring 6,000 people to Reading, Pennsylvania, where there's no airport. I want to bring 6,000 people here to come watch me speak along with my incredible speaker lineup. I wouldn't have taken action. And so I broke it down and I said, what can I do year one? What's realistic? My goal was 150 people. It ended up being 160 people from 16 states in Canada who flew into Reading, flew into Philly, then drove to Reading. And they were here for 3 days for an incredible live event and a ton of fun and human connection and all these things. Cool. Year two, the goal was 300. Then COVID happened, but the goal was 300. And I was well on my way. I was actually going to hit 300 pretty early, which was super exciting. And I was going to expand it from there. And so it's really about anything in life. It's just about those bite-sized things and things that fill our soul versus fill our wallet. Because here's what I've learned. If your goal is to become a millionaire, awesome. I want you to be a millionaire. Frankly, I'd love to help you get there. But the reality is, if that's your goal, when you get to $1 million, you're going to go, okay, how do I make 10 million? There's no fulfillment in that. And so what I've really been talking about lately are the 4 pillars of life. And this is what we're talking about at the retreat and throughout all the calls leading up to the retreat is business and finances, 1, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And we have to find balance in those 4 pillars in our life to really create fulfillment in our life. Because I believe that on top of those 4 pillars, there's this glass plate, and everything we hold dear is on top of that glass plate, right? And if all I did was focus on how do I make $1 million, I'm going to build that pillar up, which is good for that part of it. But that glass plate is going to tip, and I'm going to lose everything that I hold dear. And when I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to be miserable. And so when I look at that, man, it's all about focusing on those 4 pillars, really hunting fulfillment versus goals, and finding happiness in the journey.
Dude, I love that, man. And you actually did jog my memory. It was about taking action because, like, for me, man, it's incredible hearing that because I think it's this stuff that seems so menial and so like obvious, but it's really not. And I think it takes someone like you to really lay it out in a way that makes sense to people. And I think the way you said it right there makes a lot of sense if you just take, for starters, like you said, the concept of action. And when you said that, for me, the trajectory I'm at for my life, man, I'm a college dropout, man. I got, I had a 1.7 graduating high school as well. Couldn't get into any schools. And, but the common theme, man, was imperfect action, dude. I wasn't well read, man. I didn't have the knowledge. I would just take the imperfect action, man. And so I think that's, a testament to where I've gotten and to where you've gotten is, we didn't always have maybe the skills or the tools, but, you would take that action and learn as you go. And so, man, I want to get into that same aspect, kind of similar to taking action where, I think a lot of people are probably scared to take action because they're scared of failure. So whether it's, the idea of being seen as a failure or whether it's the idea of internally just feeling like a failure. And so I'm curious, like, what's your perspective on how to use that idea of taking the action, take small action every day, and then overcoming that fear of failure? Because it's engraved in us, man. Like us who were failures in school, literally, like we had F's. Like, so you know what I mean? So you're conditioned, and then, at home, like you get in trouble, you fail, you get punished. So how do people detach from that fear of failure and be able to use that action to benefit them and kind of get rid of that fear of failure?
Yeah. So I like to attack it from the front, right? And so for me, I have a daily practice of visualization, and I visualize what I want in my life. And I visualize it to a point where I can smell it, I can feel it, I can hear it. I know what my loved ones are saying to me in those moments. I know all of these things, and I live it every day. Whether I'm actually living it or visualizing it, I'm living it every single day. And it helps me take the fear out of my action, because that feeling is something I really want to feel. It's what I want for myself. It's what I want for the people I care about most. That's what I want. And so I start with that visualization practice, right? I then ask myself, yeah, cool. I can be safe. I can sit here and go, okay, I'm good. I don't need to expand myself. I don't need to do these things. But then I fast forward in my brain and I go, what if I don't? What are the things that I'm missing out on for my own life? What about the lives I'm trying to impact? Who am I missing? What are the things I'm not doing properly? Right? Like starting the podcast, that was scary from day one, man. You put this thing out there. And by the way, this is before everybody had a podcast. Like when
Right,
I
right.
started podcasting, I would say to people, I have a podcast, and they go, what's a podcast? And
Wow.
now I say it, I go, dude, I say I have a podcast now, and people are like, oh, you too? Like, yeah, me
That's
too.
literally the thing now. It's like it's like, oh, what, do you have one? No, but I've been thinking about it or whatever.
Exactly. I've been thinking
Yeah.
about it for years. I hear that a lot. Imagine
Yeah,
what
it's a big
happened.
one.
Imagine what would have happened if you started that years ago. Congratulations. But
Yeah,
here's the
man.
thing. It was scary to start, and then it wasn't doing well to begin with. But I remember very early on. I mean, we were doing like 60 downloads an episode, and come to find out, apparently that's pretty normal in podcasting. I do a lot more than that now, thank goodness. But apparently that's pretty normal. But I was like, oh man, nobody's listening. What's the point? I think I was like 40 something episodes in. And at the time, somebody reached out to me and said, because of your show, I decided not to take my life.
Wow.
And this has now happened about a handful of times. And the first time hit me really hard. And I realized, imagine if fear stopped me from doing the podcast.
Wow.
That would have been a life gone from this planet.
Mm.
That would have truly affected this world in the way that it spun every single day, because I was afraid, because I was worried about judgment, because I was so worried that I'd fall on my face. Look, here's the thing. If you failed, at least you tried. At least you learned, right?
Mm.
What's that saying of like, no harm, no foul, fail again, right? Like fail again. Like
Yeah.
that's the beauty. Dude, I've failed multiple times. Frankly, the first iteration of this podcast failed. That's just the reality of life. You have to get better by trying. But think beyond yourself for a moment when you're afraid to do something, and think about the impact it may have in the world.
Man.
You could save a life, and you could save a life the way I did, or say you were like, hey, I wanted to start a podcast about how to build websites and SEO and all this stuff. You could improve a business to a point where it saves a family from being homeless. Like you could save a life just by stepping out of your fear. And so think a little bit outside of yourself when you're a little afraid to do something, and think about how important it might be to the world.
Man, I love that. And it goes back to what you said earlier about having it be, I think when you have the idea that it's more than just you, it's more of the service. Like you said, coming from when you found that you wanted to have that impact from the first time somebody told you that your words or your actions saved their life. I think, carrying that idea that like you impact, like being powerful means you influence and change the lives of other people. So like that you have power in what you're doing. So it's not just you, man, who's involved in this, man. It's so many other people. So, man, I do appreciate that sentiment. I think that's a perfect way to kind of counteract that fear, man, is to look, or to that fear of failure, is to kind of look at it as like such a bigger portion than you. Cause it is, man. Like you said, if you start that book, who knows, that book could change somebody's life. That book could cure cancer. You just don't know, man. So, man, that's amazing, dude. So talk about just like the progression of your journey, man, and being able to do that, like, being consistent with your podcast, and obviously growing to where you are now. You're coaching people, you've got virtual events, you're selling out events and speaking and all this stuff you have going on now, man. Like, just talk about the consistency and the progression there. And then like, what excites you about just how far you've came and where you're at now?
Dude, great question. There's so much there to unpack. I mean, the reality is with my podcast, people are always like, what's the secret? And yeah, there's growth hacks. There's things you could do just like any part of any business. But the reality is it was consistency from day one, right? I showed up other than about a month and a half because when I started, there was a co-host. And so I took a month and a half off and relaunched as just myself, same name and everything, but it was just myself. Other than that month and a half, I've shown up every single Tuesday for 4.5 years, 5 years almost. And so I look at that and I go, okay, well, that's it. Like, that's the real secret. Consistently showing up, being true to myself, being true to my purpose, being true to my story, and continuing to build off of things. And then obviously the steps beyond that, right? Surrounding yourself with the right people, investing in the right people to spend your time and activities. And are you focusing on true growth? Are you putting in the work? Are you disciplined to get the things done that you need to get done? And all the things in between, right? I believe that anything can be can be attained with consistency and discipline. Right. And that's everything in your life. That's how I mean, I'm sure you talk about it with your clients in the health
Yeah.
space, right? Like, hey, look, you want that abs. It's about consistency and discipline. Show up to the gym every day and stop eating crap. Cool. Like, that's literally the foundation for success in anything. And that's really what it's been for the podcast. The show now gets played in over 100 countries every single week. And I feel so insanely blessed to experience the cool moments from that. And then obviously the live events and everything like that. You ask me, what am I excited about? I'm excited about a ton of stuff right now. 2021 is packed with a ton of great things. I don't know when this is coming out, but I have a free summit coming up at the end of February or the middle of February, which people can go to growthnowsummit.com and grab your seat. Incredible speakers. It's a 2-day event. You can watch it live, or I think you pay $37. You can watch the recordings, but it's much more fun live because you can interact and do all that stuff. So grab the free thing. Then we have our retreat in March, which you're going to be a part of, and I'm really excited about that. And then hopefully, COVID slows down and I can do my live event in September. And then just in the podcast space itself, like I feel like I live two worlds, right? Like I have the self-development growth guy thing. And then I also have the podcast thing. And so in the podcast world, I've just partnered with 3 amazing human beings who I've respected a level that I can't even tell you. And they're Chris Ross, who very, very, very successful entrepreneur in the UK. He actually is originally American. I think he's still an American, but he lives in the UK. Brian Bogert and Adam Shively and myself are launching a podcast network, which we're happy to announce that you're a part of it as well, which is Winject. It's Winject Studios. Just really excited about that. And it really comes across of what's the win-win for everybody. How can we inject get it? How can we inject winning into every single person who wants to be a part of this platform? And our goal is by the end of 2021 to have 1,000+ podcasters on the network and really help every single person within, make a massive impact in the world with the messages that they're sharing. And so much stuff. And by the way, if any podcasters are listening to this and they want to be a part of it, they can go fill out a form. We're slowly onboarding people now. You're a part of the first 50, which is awesome.
So exciting.
But they can go to winject.com, fill out the form, and then somebody will be in touch letting them know what the next steps are to see if they do qualify. But just really, really excited to get that off the ground and really be a part of the building of that. So a lot of exciting things in the works. And I just feel here's the reality, man. I feel blessed every morning when I wake up. And if I can continue that I make my choices based off of continuing that. I just want to feel blessed. And I've realized that when I focus on the 4 pillars and I focus on consistent growth, the money chases me. Money is not something that I ever aim for. I've just been blessed with understanding of living in my purpose, living in my passion, and the money chases me. And it's been a blessed life so far. I'm hoping I have 100+ years left. Yes, that means I will live to be over 130 years old. We've all got goals, but that is my goal. And
I love
excited for what's next, man.
Dude, it's incredible, man. And I think people listening, I hope they understand the adversity, the failures, and just the consistency and the time it's taken to get where you are. Because, when I want to preface, we've had this conversation separately, but I want to preface you being excited about all this stuff from 21. Let me tell you guys right now, and I'll let you speak on it a little bit more. Justin had, how many events did you have get canceled? How many speaking engagements? How many, huge plans did you have get canceled in 2020? So what I mean by that is, I want people to realize that just like everyone, man, you had to deal with COVID. You had the adversity there. I don't want people to just think, 2020 was a breeze and now 2021 is going to be exciting, man. Like, talk a little bit about some of the ways you had to adapt and kind of move around 2020, because I know it wasn't easy for you, man.
Yeah, and so here's actually, I'm glad you asked this because I wasn't even thinking about this, but 2020 was the blessing for how big 2021 is going to be. 2020 was tough for me. I probably lost about $100,000 in business between speaking engagements and my event. I think I had lost, which would have been 10 speaking engagements and then my event on top of that. Just from 2020 itself, and then whatever would have rolled into 2021. But here's the crazy thing that's happening. I really believe in this podcast network that we're launching. I believe in the community. I believe that it's going to do big things for me as well. This wouldn't have happened if it weren't for COVID. Brian Bogert, who's essentially the guy who's connected all of the 4 of us that are in the thing, or have launched the network. He had just sold off his company and switching into becoming a full-time speaker and coach and all these things on a super high level. Like, this guy partners with David Meltzer on stuff. And so he was shifting and he would have spoken all over the world, but COVID shut that down. And so he ended up going on essentially a podcast tour. He's been over 150 podcasts in less than a year. And my
Wow.
podcast was one of them. And we connected because of the podcast and on a deep level. And immediately both of us were like, we're doing something together. I don't know what it is, but we're doing something together. And that is actually the reason Winject is being born, is because of COVID. Like if COVID never happened, Winject wouldn't be happening. And so we have to understand that a lot of times the setback is necessary for us to step forward in the person we're supposed to be, or the thing that we're supposed to do, or whatever. Excuse me. But that's the beauty of it all, man. Like, look, we're all going to have hardships, but we have to understand, like, okay, this is happening for me. What is that thing? And be aware of it. If I stayed on the same path for the whole entire thing and I wasn't open to shifting, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah, man. And I was just gonna jump in with that quote that you said in the beginning, or just that idea of, man, it's happening for you, not to you. Because, and I think, man, like you said, I wake up every day and I literally, like, blessed is the only word to describe it, man. Because I count my blessings, man, that I know you do too, and just like see where you're at now and appreciate that. But if if people don't reflect or look at that stuff, they might think 2020 was a drag or a waste. But man, if you really go back and you look hard at what 2020 set up for 2021, I guarantee you can find those amazing opportunities, or those amazing situations. And it's amazing to see that Winject was born from COVID, and a lot of the stuff that you have going forward and looking forward to 2021 was set in stone in 2020, man. So hopefully people can receive that aspect of it as well. And I want to be respectful of your time, man. But two things. One, guys, like he said, go check out Winject. If you do have a podcast and want to be part of the community, it's gonna be the fastest growing thing in the freaking world, and it's gonna hit. I mean, definitely try to jump on that. And then two, this podcast should be out in early late January, early February, so you still have time to jump into the growth event, the growth seminar, the virtual seminar. So I'll be there. Super looking forward to that. But yeah, man, I want to just touch on just you've obviously had just a crazy journey, man, in your life, and obviously learned a lot, man. You've dropped the bombs of knowledge today. But what's one thing, man, to kind of wrap up the tone of this amazing podcast that you would give the listeners as just one piece of advice, man? Just, one kind of core thing to stick with them. Maybe we have touched on it, maybe we haven't. If you could just drop some knowledge, man, to wrap up today, what would it be?
Yeah. If you want to change your life, take care of yourself first. And it seems really selfish, but it's not, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And so what I've instilled into my life and learned from the top people of what they do is they take care of themselves first. Meaning the only non-negotiables in my life are the things that fill my cup. And so there's 4 things I do every single day that are non-negotiables. 1, I walk with my girlfriend 3+ miles every morning so we can connect, we can move our bodies, and we can get going. 2, I visualize heavily every single day. So there's always a moment where I stop and visualize what I want in my life. 3, I learn something new every single day. Like right now, I'm reading Limitless by Jim Quick. Then I'm moving on to Atomic Habits. So I'm always learning something new. And number 4, I reach out to somebody I admire, who I respect, or who I love every single day, and let them know that I'm thinking about them. And you're probably thinking, Justin, that seems like that's for somebody else. I go, no, it's for me. Because number 1, I love making people feel good. So that makes me feel good. And number 2, it always comes back and pays me tenfold. So those are the 4 things I do every single day, non-negotiable. To make sure my cup is full, because whatever overflows from my cup is for everybody else, but what is in my cup is for me. And so the biggest tip in growth, period, is taking care of yourself first.
Man, I love it, dude. I feel like I'm talking to like an older version of where I want to be, man, because everything you're saying is stuff that I like hold so dear. Like that pour from an empty cup, man, thing is so true, dude. And I just want to say to you, man, like I admire so much of where you are and everything you're saying. And I say all the time, this is a Tommy Parker quote, so you can attach me at the bottom of the little thing, but you're the only person you spend 100% of your time with in life. So you got to be the number one priority, man. So that is just an amazing thing to wrap up the podcast, man. Where can people find you, brother? Find your amazing podcast. Where can they find you? I know you're growing your personal brand a lot as well. So where can they connect with you, man?
Yeah, man, 2 best places. Wherever they're listening to this podcast, go check out the Growth Now movement. So wherever they're listening, just go search really quick, click that subscribe button if you like it. And the second thing is Instagram. So at Justin T. Schenck on Instagram. You can see in the show notes how to spell my last name. I was not blessed with a great spelling of my last name. So at Justin T. Schenck, you can find me there. Shoot me a message on there. I connect with everybody as best I can to see how I can add value. So looking forward to connecting with your audience, man. Tommy, this has been phenomenal. I love what you're all about. You say you're envious of me and you see yourself. I'm envious of you because you're only 23 and you're already smarter than me, man. So you've got a great life ahead of you.
Man, I received that, bro. I appreciate it, man. Well, I'm excited to build this connection. I'm excited for the listeners to get a glimpse into your life and hopefully follow your journey, man. You're an incredible dude, and I can't thank you enough for being on here, man.
Thanks, brother.
Awesome. We're out. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end. I really appreciate your support, not only for me, not only for Powerful One, but also all the guests on this platform, and just tuning in and being inspired and being powerful, man. So, thank you again if you watched this, and, excited for the future. Excited. It's been a great year for Powerful One. Excited for everything I have coming in the future, everything with the brand, everything with my personal brand, and just everything in general. So just want to thank you guys again, and be sure to, share this if it inspired you, if it felt powerful, if you connected with it, share it with your friends, share the platform. Please go, if you don't mind, go subscribe on YouTube, go write a review on iTunes. All that stuff really means a lot. Thank you guys again, and be sure to stay tuned because every week we are coming out with a new podcast episode. Stay locked into the page, guys. Thank you. Stay powerful.